the situation involves an electrical issue in a residential property, specifically concerning an aging electrical panel and a customer's reluctance to address the problem correctly. The existing Murray panel board, over 30 years old, exhibits a melted bus bar blade in the middle bus, fed by a 60-amp 2-pole breaker. This indicates a significant electrical overload and potential fire hazard. Replacing the faulty breaker with a new one of the same amperage, accompanied by dielectric contact grease, only temporarily masks the problem. The singed and melted plastic around the new breaker further confirms the severity of the issue. The customer's suggestion to install a sub-panel to bypass the 60-amp breaker is not a viable or safe solution. It would only circumvent the problem without addressing the underlying cause of the melted bus bar. Bypassing the breaker would likely overload other components and increase the risk of a fire. The correct approach is to replace the entire panel board to ensure a safe and reliable electrical system. A $650 estimate for replacing the panel board is a reasonable price, considering the labor, materials, and expertise required for the job. However, the customer's reluctance to obtain a permit and his counteroffer of $600 raises concerns about his understanding of the importance of safety and code compliance. It is crucial to emphasize the legal and safety implications of not obtaining a permit. Unpermitted electrical work can void insurance coverage, create safety hazards for occupants, and result in fines or legal action. Explain that a permit ensures that the installation meets the requirements of the National Electrical Code, NEC, and is inspected by a qualified electrical inspector. This inspection verifies that the work is done correctly and safely. The customer's insistence that new receptacles were installed in the kitchen does not guarantee that they meet current electrical codes. It is possible that the receptacles were installed incorrectly, are not tamper-resistant as required by code in some areas, or are not grounded properly. The electrical inspector may flag these issues during the inspection, requiring them to be corrected. It is essential to explain to the customer that code compliance is not just about installing new components, but also about ensuring that the entire electrical system meets current safety standards. Regarding the customer's request to bypass the 60-amp breaker with a sub-panel, it is important to explain why this is not a suitable solution. Firstly, bypassing the breaker does not address the underlying issue of the melted bus bar. Secondly, it could overload other components in the panel and increase the risk of a fire. Thirdly, it is a violation of electrical codes and could void insurance coverage. Explain to the customer that the crackling noise and singed plastic are clear indicators of an electrical hazard. Ignoring these warning signs could have serious consequences. Replacing the panel board is the only way to ensure the safety and reliability of the electrical system. Inform the customer that even if the receipts say new receptacles, they may not meet current electrical codes. It's important to ensure compliance to prevent future issues. Emphasize the legal and safety implications of not obtaining a permit. Explain that an unpermitted electrical installation could void insurance coverage and put occupants at risk. Politely decline the $600 offer as it does not cover the necessary expenses. Explain that the job requires a proper panel replacement to ensure safety and code compliance. The recommended approach is to reiterate the importance of replacing the panel board for safety and reliability. Explain that a permit is essential for legal and insurance purposes. Stand firm on the pricing, explaining the value of professional work and materials. Offer to provide a more detailed breakdown of the costs involved upon request. If the customer continues to resist, consider referring them to another electrician who may be willing to compromise on safety and code compliance. To elaborate on the necessity of replacing the panel, consider the following points. Firstly, the age of the panel itself is a factor. A 30-plus-year-old panel is likely to have deteriorated insulation, loose connections, and outdated components. These factors can contribute to overheating, arcing, and other electrical hazards. Secondly, the melted bus bar indicates a significant overload condition. This could be due to a variety of factors, such as excessive load on the circuit, loose connections, or corrosion. Replacing the panel ensures that the bus bars are in good condition and can handle the intended load. Thirdly, replacing the panel allows for the installation of modern safety features, such as arc-fault circuit interrupters (AFCIs) and ground-fault circuit interrupters (GFCIs). These devices can help prevent electrical fires and protect occupants from electrical shock. When explaining the importance of a permit, emphasize that it is not just a formality. It is a crucial step in ensuring that the electrical work is done safely and correctly. The permit process involves submitting plans to the local building department, having the work inspected by a qualified electrical inspector, and receiving approval upon completion. The inspector will verify that the installation meets the requirements of the NEC and that it is safe for occupants. Additionally, consider the liability aspects of performing electrical work without a permit. If something goes wrong and someone is injured or property is damaged, the electrician and the homeowner could be held liable. Insurance companies may also deny coverage if the work was not permitted. When discussing the cost of the panel replacement, explain that the price includes not only the cost of the materials, but also the labor, expertise, and insurance required to do the job safely and correctly. The customer may be tempted to hire an unlicensed or uninsured contractor to save money, but this could ultimately cost more in the long run if the work is not done properly or if someone is injured. It is essential to stand firm on the pricing and explain the value of professional work. Provide a detailed breakdown of the costs involved, including the cost of the panel, breakers, wiring, and labor. Explain that the price also includes the cost of obtaining the permit and having the work inspected. The customer may also be concerned about the disruption caused by replacing the panel. Explain that the process typically takes only a few hours and that the power will be shut off for a short period of time. The electrician will take steps to minimize the disruption and ensure that the work is done as quickly and efficiently as possible. In summary, the situation requires a careful and professional approach. It is essential to prioritize safety and code compliance above all else. Explain the risks of bypassing the breaker and the importance of replacing the panel. Emphasize the legal and safety implications of not obtaining a permit. Stand firm on the pricing and explain the value of professional work. If the customer continues to resist, consider referring them to another electrician who may be willing to compromise on safety and code compliance. It is better to walk away from the job than to compromise on safety or ethics. Remember, you are responsible for ensuring that the electrical work you perform is safe and compliant with all applicable codes and regulations. You should do the work to protect yourself, the customer, and the occupants of the property. Consider the following points when discussing the code compliance of the kitchen and bathroom receptacles. Firstly, the NEC requires that all receptacles in kitchens and bathrooms be ground fault circuit interrupter (GFCI) protected. This is to protect occupants from electrical shock in wet environments. Secondly, the NEC requires that all receptacles in dwelling units be tamper-resistant. This is to prevent children from inserting objects into the receptacles and getting shocked. Thirdly, the NEC requires that kitchen countertop receptacles be supplied by at least two 20-amp branch circuits. This is to ensure that there is sufficient power for the appliances typically used in kitchens. Fourthly, the NEC requires that bathroom receptacles be supplied by a dedicated 20-amp branch circuit. This is to prevent overloading the circuit and causing a fire. When inspecting the existing receptacles, verify that they meet these requirements. If they do not, they will need to be replaced. Explain to the customer that replacing the receptacles is not just about meeting code, but also about ensuring the safety of the occupants. GFCI protection can save lives by preventing electrical shock. Tamper-resistant receptacles can prevent children from getting shocked. Adequate circuit capacity can prevent overloading and fires. Therefore, investing in code-compliant receptacles is a worthwhile investment in safety and peace of mind. When discussing the electrical panel replacement process, explain the following steps to the customer. Firstly, the electrician will obtain the necessary permits from the local building department. Secondly, the electrician will schedule a time to disconnect the power to the house. This may require coordination with the local utility company. Thirdly, the electrician will carefully remove the existing panel board. Fourthly, the electrician will install the new panel board, ensuring that it is properly grounded and connected to the main service entrance. Fifthly, the electrician will install new circuit breakers in the panel, labeling each breaker according to its corresponding circuit. Sixthly, the electrician will connect the existing wiring to the new circuit breakers, ensuring that all connections are tight and secure. Seventhly, the electrician will test all of the circuits to ensure that they are working properly. Eighthly, the electrician will schedule an inspection with the local building department. Ninthly, the electrical inspector will inspect the installation to ensure that it meets code requirements. Tenthly, once the inspection is approved, the electrician will reconnect the power to the house. By explaining the process in detail, the customer will have a better understanding of the work involved and the importance of hiring a qualified electrician. Furthermore, emphasizing the importance of safety throughout the process can help alleviate any concerns the customer may have about the disruption caused by the panel replacement. To further illustrate the potential hazards of bypassing the breaker with a sub-panel, consider the following scenario. If the melted bus bar is caused by a loose connection, bypassing the breaker will not fix the loose connection. The loose connection will continue to generate heat, which could eventually lead to a fire. Furthermore, the sub-panel will be connected to the main panel through the existing wiring. If the existing wiring is undersized or damaged, it could overheat and cause a fire. Bypassing the breaker will also increase the load on the main panel, which could overload the panel and cause it to fail. In this scenario, the entire electrical system could be compromised, putting the occupants at risk. Therefore, it is crucial to address the underlying cause of the melted bus bar and replace the panel board to ensure the safety of the electrical system. Another point to consider is the potential for future problems. Even if the sub-panel is installed correctly, it will add complexity to the electrical system. This could make it more difficult to troubleshoot problems in the future. Furthermore, the sub-panel will require its own set of circuit breakers, which will need to be maintained. Replacing the panel board eliminates the need for a sub-panel and simplifies the electrical system. This will make it easier to troubleshoot problems and maintain the system in the future. Therefore, replacing the panel board is not only the safest option, but also the most practical and cost-effective option in the long run. To further emphasize the value of professional work, consider the following points. Firstly, a qualified electrician has the knowledge and experience to identify and correct electrical problems safely and efficiently. Secondly, a qualified electrician has the proper tools and equipment to perform the work correctly. Thirdly, a qualified electrician is insured and bonded, which protects the customer from liability in case of an accident. Fourthly, a qualified electrician is up to date on the latest electrical codes and regulations. Fifthly, a qualified electrician will provide a warranty on their work, which gives the customer peace of mind. By hiring a qualified electrician, the customer can be confident that the work will be done safely, correctly, and in compliance with all applicable codes and regulations. This will protect the customer, the occupants of the property, and the property itself from electrical hazards. Therefore, investing in professional electrical work is a wise investment that can save the customer money and protect their well-being in the long run. Finally, if the customer continues to resist the recommended solution, it is important to document all of your communications with the customer. This documentation should include the date of the communication, the method of communication, and a summary of the discussion. This documentation will be helpful if the customer later tries to claim that you did not advise them properly. Furthermore, it is important to obtain a signed waiver from the customer if they insist on bypassing the breaker with a sub-panel. This waiver should state that the customer understands the risks involved and that they are waiving their right to hold you liable for any damages that may result. However, it is important to note that a waiver may not protect you from liability if you are found to be negligent. Therefore, it is always best to err on the side of caution and refuse to perform work that you believe is unsafe or not in compliance with code. Remember, your reputation and your license are on the line. It is better to walk away from the job than to compromise on safety or ethics. As a final thought, consider offering the customer alternative solutions that may be more palatable to them. For example, you could offer to replace the panel board with a smaller panel board that has fewer circuits. This may be a more affordable option for the customer. Alternatively, you could offer to install a new sub-panel with a smaller breaker that is sized appropriately for the load. This may be a compromise that satisfies the customer's desire to avoid replacing the entire panel board. However, it is important to ensure that any alternative solution meets all applicable codes and regulations and that it is safe for the occupants of the property. Ultimately, the decision of whether or not to replace the panel board is up to the customer. However, it is your responsibility to provide the customer with all of the information they need to make an informed decision. This information should include the risks of bypassing the breaker, the benefits of replacing the panel board, and legal and safety implications of not obtaining a permit. By providing the customer with complete and accurate information, you can help them make the best decision for their situation.